All right. So, hello, my name is Grace Noe, and this is my Flash Talk. So, a little bit about me before we dive in. I was raised in Hartford, Wisconsin, a kind of small town northwest of Milwaukee. Growing up, I was always interested in any kind of art making, but photography was the medium that spoke to me the most. So, I eventually decided to attend UW Milwaukee for a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Photography and Imaging. And so, I just decided to include some photo work from the past 4 or 5 years here on this slide just to show a very brief origin and progression of this passion of mine for this medium. So before moving into my own work, I thought it would be beneficial to briefly show some inspirations of mine that work within the medium of photography and that were crucial in my own development as an artist. The first one being Erin Sullivan. She's a travel photographer, and I really credit her for being someone who I've looked up to as a photographer for a long time. Um, what first made me fall in love with photography back in high school and even earlier was this idea of travel photography and just photographing cool, beautiful places within nature. And even though we don't necessarily create the same type of work at this moment, she has always been a huge inspiration from the start. And then a more recent inspiration, specifically within my most recent work that I'll be speaking about tonight. Gloria Wong is someone who ultimately played a role as inspiration for the portrait work I produced, specifically in the way she utilizes natural light in order to create these beautiful shots. So moving into my own work, specifically the work that's displayed in the BFA exhibition this semester, I'll be flipping through the images as I speak here. So overall, my work is motivated by an innate curiosity about my own family history and matrilineal relationships. This collection was born out of this curiosity about my own family tree, specifically the women within it, and it ultimately invites the viewer into my home to discuss these ancestral lines and examine the many different ways to view, define, and experience a family tree. Through these environmental portraits of me, my mother, and my grandmother, each one of our respective spaces, which you'll see in the next few slides and the previous one, as well as documentation of archival photographs and letters sent and received by the women within my own family lineage, as you can see here. These images flip the focus onto the mothers or the women who make up the roots of the tree that directly grows from them to the future generations. The title of this collection in the top left is Sincerely Grace. This title came from the process of looking through these letters and feeling this kind of rare connection between me and these women in my family that I never got to meet in person, but in a way I'm meeting them through their words in these letters that they never knew would end up in my hands generations later. In each of these photographs, the location, setting, and everything within that setting informs the viewer of the things that are most important or most relevant to each one of us and how those things and the choice of settings differs from person to person. The smallest things such as musical or literary interests, hints to the religion that's practiced, framed pictures and artifacts from close friends and family, art hanging on the walls, etc. It all shows the things we each deem most important at each specific stage in life, or at least represents that. So getting to this final iteration of work was a journey for me. And throughout that journey, I was able to do an incredible deep dive into my own family history, having conversations and looking through digital and physical archives that led this work to where it is now. I've also discovered the importance of simple understanding when it comes to family lineage, and I've realized the benefits of such a methodical process of researching and curating information throughout the process of creating this collection. And one thing I wanted to note about the photographs of these old letters and pictures is the choice to physically photograph these objects. I played around with the idea of scanning them in, but ultimately I felt that the photographs helped communicate what I was trying to say in a much better way. The physicality of these delicate letters and photos, like seeing textures and the shadows underneath, was very important to me to include. Ultimately, the photographs that comprise this collection are meant to initiate a larger conversation surrounding women's essential role in each one of our own family's history, archive, and legacy. The order that which these photos are displayed assists in that idea, going from myself at the beginning and my mother in the middle, with both of us looking towards the portrait of my grandmother who is looking back at us. This idea of my grandma looking back on the two generations that came after her is one of the ways I'm sort of telling this story through visual clues like that. And then these are some shots of the physical installation of these pieces. Personally, I think the experience of walking through the hallway that these are displayed in really elevates this work as a whole in a way that isn't always possible through a virtual setting. And while we're here on the installation pictures, I just wanted to give a shout out to my dad for making these beautiful frames that house my photographs in this exhibition. And I also wanted to shout out my mom and grandma for agreeing to be my beautiful subjects and inspiration in this project as well. And that is all. Thank you so much.